What's going on, everybody? It's Jake from Civilian Jeeps here. Today I'd like to go over Speedhut gauges. Speedhut gauges, I've had them since I purchased the Jeep around 4 years ago. I bought the speedometer, and within the past year I decided to buy the other gauges that you'll see later. In this video I want to go over different aspects. I want to go over about the Jeep itself with the Speedhut gauges, the drive around of the gauges themselves, and then after that I want to show you the gauges at night, and then following that I want to show you on the computer where to go to get these gauges. Alright, so let's make our way into the Jeep here, and I'll show you a little bit of the interior. The actual walk around of the Jeep itself will be in another video, but I just want to show you some of the highlights of the gauges themselves. So here's the clock, my tachometer, speedometer, volts, and oil pressure gauge. Alright, so now that we made our way back into the Jeep, I'm going to go over a few key features of the actual Speedhut company. First will be it's a US based company, meaning that they offer a lifetime warranty. They lifetime all the electronics in the gauges themselves. The defects from user error, maybe like you drop the gauge, I don't believe they lifetime that, but anything electronic wise or craftsmanship, they will lifetime warranty it. Another thing is they've been in business for over 10 years now. That goes to say something for a company that is going to stick around to better serve us and not just pack up overnight and leave. It's a surface mounted technology. It uses all your factory OEM mounting points, and it's flush just like the OEM gauges. There's a microprocessor controlled stepper gauge movement, and this reduces vibration and any type of motion that would cause the gauge to malfunction. It isn't phased by temperature as well. I've had this Jeep on very hot days, like 90 to even 100 plus, and it's not been affected by it. Even cold, like below freezing, it hasn't been affected by it. And like I said, I've owned these for over 4 years now, so the speedometer for over 4 years. I bought this Jeep, and my main issue was that the Chevy 350 that I have in it with the SM465 and MP205, I couldn't find the right adapter to make these gauges work for what I need. It become a chore to find the OEM speedometer gauge to transmission adapter. So I got to doing some research and decided to go ahead, even though, as you'll see later, these are somewhat pricey gauges. You'll see that they might be worth the money for you. To me, they were. There is a 4 to 6 week build period on these gauges. The gauges, from my experience, they were here in 4 weeks. The clock gauge, though, seemed to take about 6 weeks, which was odd. And I don't really know what the holdup was for that, but maybe it just took a little extra craftsmanship. They are direct replacement, like I mentioned. They're all customizable. The bezel, the background, the pointer needle, all that is completely customizable to whatever you want, and later in the video I'll show you on the computer just how customizable these gauges are. Alright, so let's start with the speedometer here. As you can see, it's a billet aluminum bezel. Right there. It has, just like the OEM setup, it goes to 90 miles per hour. It has empty and fuel gauge, your temperature gauge, and there is another model of speedometer that you can get where it has a tachometer that goes right here. But I myself didn't want that. I wanted to go with more of the original feel. It just becomes somewhat cluttered, I feel like, with that tachometer. So, as you'll see later on, I put the tachometer over beside in the factory position. And as you'll see here, you have an LCD display, and you have a toggle button. This is your toggle button that controls the LCD display, and you can get various different displays when you toggle the button. See, that was my trip meter. This is the current time. This is the elevation that I'm setting at. This is my miles per hour in digital. This is my northing, or compass as I should say. Over top of the toggle part of the LCD display, you have your overall odometer reading for your mileage. I've went 4,462 miles within the 4 years that I've owned this Jeep. When I bought this Jeep, I decided to go the Speedhut route, and I also did the engine swap 4 years ago. So that is the exact mileage that I have on my engine swap, which might appease to you guys as far as your guys' engine swaps. Or I'm not exactly sure if you can program that. I don't believe you can, but I'm not entirely sure. You might be able to program that to your actual speedometer that you currently have in your Jeep. That would be a question for Speedhut. Just like the original, on the sides of the gauges, being over here and over here, you will have your turn signals, your warning indicators, whether you're in four-wheel drive or not. All this just depends on what you hook up at the time that you install the gauge. Now, this gauge, it does have all electronic sending units. The temperature sending unit was electronic, the fuel was electronic, and like I mentioned earlier, it's not cable driven, it's all based on GPS. And I routed that wire all the way across my dash over here. This is the box for the GPS sending unit of the Speedhut gauge. Now, funny story behind that, whenever I rewired this Jeep, I actually cut, or accidentally cut, the GPS gauge, and I went to my local CB store, and that is a universal GPS antenna right there, and it plugged in just fine. It's been working ever since. And next we have the volts. The volts also has an anti-fog window. As you can see, it matches the speedometer. It is also fully customizable, and the instructions on the Speedhut gauges are very straightforward, easy to read. You really can't get any more simplistic than Speedhut makes it out to be. Next we have the oil gauge. The oil pressure gauge has an electronic pressure transducer included, and it also includes the wire harness. This oil pressure gauge for my setup was a little more challenging than I would have liked, just because on the back of the manifold, the way that I had to have it installed under the distributor was a little high, but overall I made it work and it suited my needs. Next we have the tachometer. The tachometer comes in distributor and distributorless without the adapters. The tachometer itself can be programmed for multiple, like V8, inline 6 with the 258. I've got it running on a Chevy 350. I know people use it on the 304, the 360, the AMC 400. It really just depends on what distributor you're running. Next we have the clock gauge. As you can see, the clock gauge matches the other gauges. It also has the anti-fog window, and the pointer needles do not illuminate at night. I'm not sure exactly why this might be, but it has something to do with the construction of the clock itself. So the clock is something that's never quite worked right. From the moment I got it, I wired it up exactly like the instructions show, and it's never held time. Like, I'll set the time and it'll work great for a day or two, and then it'll just slowly start slipping from the actual time. Like, it'll be minutes off, and so I've just decided to disconnect it for the time being until I can figure out why exactly that might be. Alright, so now I want to go over how much each gauge cost. The Speedo itself, in this configuration, is $420, and that's on sale. Usually I think it's closer to $500. The tachometer is $106. The volts gauge is $70. The oil gauge is $145. And going back to the clock is $67. And overall, the package deal is $809, which is quite expensive for these gauges, but you're Alright, so we're back in the Jeep. I've put the car cover on, as you can tell. I did this to try to simulate more of a dimly lit environment so I could illuminate the lights on the Speedhut gauges. I don't have the key in the ignition, so the LCD display is not going to be on. But overall, they have a great look to them. And underneath the dash on each of the gauges, you have a switch that controls the brightness, or you can wire them all up to 1, which is what I've done. And going over here to the clock, you can see what I was talking about earlier, where the needle is not illuminated. But you can still see it because the clock itself is backlit. It's just the other gauges are illuminated white, the needle is. But overall, I'm super happy with the way they look at night and the custom feel that I get. The custom feel that I get out of these gauges. Alright, so now we're on the Speedhut website. Go down to gauges. And Jeep CJ gauges. And here we have the speedometer, the tachometer, the clock, oil pressure gauge, temperature, air pressure, transmission temperature, water temperature, and voltage gauge, which all of them that I mentioned previously. To show you the overview of the website itself on how you can customize the gauge, let's just go into the speedometer. Go to Customize Now. Go up here to Color. See that you have all different options. This is the one that I chose. So let's just say we're trying to build my gauge again. We'll apply to gauge. Font style. You have all different fonts, but I like to keep it the classic CJ style. The tick style, which that would be these little ticks right here. I keep it standard. You can put an antique, triangle, just all different types of customizations you can do. Hit apply. Go into graphic. You can put graphics behind it, maybe like stripe, some flames if you're into that sort of thing. Checkered flag. I'll put no graphic. Logo and text. You can put a logo, and you can drag it, make it as big as you want to. I personally don't want a logo, but there's all different kinds of logos you can choose from. Put your big old beer. That's what I feel like I need right now. No logo. Apply. Go to pointer, and you can see this is during the day, and this is what your pointer looks like during the night. So my pointer, I believe, is white and white. So apply. Oh, on the pointer, if you want to see what it looks like at night, toggle over to night. You can see that I haven't set up the background for the gauge yet at night. Go here to night, and it'll show you what it's going to light up as. Ah, this one's the one I have. See, you can see at night it'll light up blue just like mine. This one lights up black at night. So let's change it to blue. The bezel, right there. I kept mine the standard. There's all different ones you can choose from. Oh, don't want to take a video tour. I didn't choose the black, I just had the standard chrome. Apply. Disc. It's these little things right here. It puts the disc behind it. I didn't choose that. You can write a note to Speedhut with any customizations that you want on it, or certain preferences. And that would be how you customize the gauge. Let me go back. As you can see, you can read through here, and I've actually mentioned over most of these in the video about the different segments of the gauge and the details. But what I was wanting to show you are the instructions on how, yeah, right here, instructions. You can hit download and it'll go over all the instructions on how to install the speedometer. So if you're curious just how difficult this installation is going to be, you can go over and check out just what all's involved, and each one has its own set of instructions. See, like, there's your speedometer, there's the wires involved, there's that GPS antenna, the one I said I accidentally cut, and then you have the backup speedometer sender connection, the fuel level, temperature, and I believe, yeah, this is how to calibrate the tach if you get the model with the tach. But I'll let you guys go through all this. Anyway, back over to Speedhut. This is Speedhut's website. I'll put a link to it in the description if you want to go check it out for yourself. And let's go ahead and cut on over to me and let's wrap this video up. Alright guys, so I'm going to wrap things up here. I hope you've enjoyed this video. This is one of my first videos. Well, actually, this is my first video. I'm a little nervous to be on camera, so I have stuttered some, and it'll get better with time, the more videos I do. But I hope you've enjoyed the About section, the gauges themselves while I'm driving, the content that I've shown you as far as the gauge illumination. I love the illumination of these gauges, and the website. I hope you enjoyed like the overview of the website itself, and overall these gauges are definitely something I would consider if you're in the market for gauges. If you don't have the money for them, I would honestly consider just holding off and saving up some money, because I think over the other aftermarket gauges, these are well worth the price that you're going to pay. And definitely shop for price deals and ads. They also have coupons at times, but I just can't say that I would skip over these gauges if I was in the market again. Overall, I think I'm going to end the video here. Hope you have a great day. Like and subscribe. And when it comes to Jeeps, keep it classic.